Okay, hello everybody. This is Conversations with Real People once again on Individualists Unite. I am the Radical Individualist, otherwise known as Chip, and we are going to have a conversation with Tina, who is prepared to assure us all that she is a real person. Is that correct?
That is correct. I am a real person.
Good deal. Okay, this conversation is a little bit different because this is associated with Braver Angels, an organization I have mentioned now and again, where the organizations, feel free to check it out yourself. I won't say too much here right now. The organization attempts to bring reds and blues together, different political views together to actually have conversations instead of arguments. And that's what we're going to do here. Today we have kind of an outline that we're going to sort of maybe follow, but mostly we're just going to have a conversation. And where we'll start from, Tina, is just kind of who are you and where are you from? And by the way, I'll be learning right along with you because I don't know that much.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Tina. I grew up in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, across the river. I ended up going to college and graduate school in the South, and I even lived in China for a year between undergrad and graduate school, and went there to teach English. I met my husband, who's a Texan, when we were both students at Duke Divinity School in Durham, North Carolina, and we ended up moving to Texas, where he was from, for 6 years, where we had our kids, and then we moved from there in 2016 back up to Cincinnati.
Okay, well, you've been around some then,
yeah.
haven't you? Okay. Well, some people know quite a bit about me, but Tina doesn't, so I'll get into it. I grew up outside of Boston. Then I went to 2 years of engineering school in Chicago, and then 2 years of liberal arts near Cincinnati. We're in Cincinnati, near Cleveland. Taught for 6 years in a rural school, moved to Cincinnati, and started a woodworking business, and that's in renovation, home renovation. We have been to Europe, various places, and we did go to China for a couple of weeks to facilitate the adoption of one of our 3 Chinese grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
So we weren't doing the adopting, but we were there.
That's
so
really cool.
It was a great experience, and they've been a great experience too,
Wow.
as a matter of fact.
That's really great.
So the question is, and this is interesting because who knows how much we do agree or disagree politically, because we have no idea. I guess we're going to find out. So I got to look at my cheat sheet here. Well, it says find areas of commonality. I think we kind of established that.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, because and then I'll answer from my side. Anything special about Cincinnati, or did you just end up here?
Well, I grew up in Fort Thomas, but I actually I live in the Oakley neighborhood now, and because of the nature of the conversation, I guess I could comment a little bit on that. We liked that there is sort of a progressive feel to the Oakley neighborhood, and actually there is some of that in Fort Thomas. There's a Facebook group called Fort Thomas Liberals that a lot of people are part of, and it makes you realize that there's a lot of that there. But and I also it wasn't really that reason specifically, but that was part of the background of it. As I look back, I would say I really wanted to just live in an area that was a little different from where I grew up. I liked still being close to it. Actually, I didn't ever think I would even move back to Cincinnati, but when I had kids, that's when it kind of had the draw. But
because of family, you mean?
Yeah. And then I work at a church, and so we wanted to live near there.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I've kind of experienced it all. Grew up in essentially a white suburb, which back then wasn't unusual. Maybe it still isn't, outside of Boston.
Yeah.
Then I experienced south side of Chicago for 2 years, so there's a real
Yeah.
immersion, you know.
Yeah.
And then rural Amish countryside or whatever area where I went to school at the College of Worcester.
Oh yeah.
And for me, coming to Ohio in the first place, which I did, what was it? I was around 20. It was a whole different experience than
Yeah.
Massachusetts. And,
I bet.
And I felt like, and a lot of people feel like, Ohio was really much more liberal, not in a political sense, but liberal in the sense of, hey, it's your life,
Yeah.
have fun, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas Massachusetts, I felt, was much more confining. There were expectations of what you would think and what you would do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's it, because it's said enough that I know you're pretty liberal. I'll call myself conservative, and yet there's room enough in this town for both of us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And here we are.
Right.
Good so far. This is one of the questions here is, why did we decide to participate? I guess that's both Braver Angels and right here, right now.
Yeah.
No, neither of us had to even look at Braver Angels or do anything with it. Why
Yeah.
did you?
Well, yeah, I mean, so to me, I'm just, I guess disturbed is the word that I could use by how polarized our country is. You know, it's interesting to reflect on like the process of that. Actually, when we moved back up to Cincinnati in 2016, if I look back on it, some of it was to be in a different environment than what we were finding in the suburbs of Houston. We were thinking about where we wanted to raise our kids, and it wasn't overtly political, but that was part of it. And so I've had no idea at the time, though, how, I mean, that was like right when things were just starting to kind of move to the polar ends in my
what
estimation.
approximate date would that be?
Well, the 2016 election,
Okay.
you know. Actually, we decided to move in late 2015, and it's just like, I sometimes think maybe we had a certain sense of how things were going and didn't realize it. I don't know. Anyways, so while, I mean, I have always wanted to and been interested in people's opinions from that are different from mine, and I really actually am sort of a very critical person, which includes myself, and so I really want to examine my own views. And I really value hearing other people's perspectives. That's part of why I, you know, have done quite a bit of traveling, and I was a sociology major in undergrad, and it also relates to my faith. I think that's a value within the Christian faith, is to have compassion and understanding for all people. And so all of that is part of my sort of who I am, but then I became even more curious and, like I said, kind of disturbed at where we got by 2020, and then, you know, even more so now, where it's really rare for me to even run into people in my life that are not a red, I mean not a blue, because in Braver Angels they talk about, you know, you're a red or a blue, they talk about that, or an independent.
In case anybody doesn't get red or blue, I think most people do. Blue sort of stands for Democrat, and red sort of stands for Republican.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and historically that, right? Like, because some people might have been, you know, so it's just kind of an easier non-direct, overt way of sort of saying what your camp is. But so I, in my life, I'm surrounded by a lot of blues, and I do have reds in my life, and sometimes talk with them about politics, but a lot of times not. You know, because
but that's what Braver Angels is for.
Right,
So
right. And so this is like a safe place to have that discussion.
Yeah.
I might not have it with some family members, but
I have the same issues, yeah.
So that's why I'm interested in this.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of similar for me. The polarization, now I'm a big student of the 19th century America, which we just happen to have had a civil war.
Yeah.
So to say there's division in this country like it happened in 2016 is not entirely accurate, because we fought to the death over our differences
Right.
150 years ago. And Democrats and Republicans parties have been having at it the whole time. There's never been a time it wasn't happening. So I just want to make that the distinction, that the dissension that's going on has always been going on. So, and I don't make any claim or desire that I want the difference to end. I just want people to be able to be different without fighting over it, you know. So, so you're going to be you and I'm going to be me. At the end of this hour, you're still going to be you and I'm still going to be me. And what the heck, you know. So, the difference maybe for me is that I don't have a whole lot of faith in either party. From long before 2016, I've been appalled at how much power grabbing both parties are doing in Washington.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And that's what I object to. And anything I'm active about, it's about weakening the control of both parties over all of us. That's really what I'm.
And money, you know, the role that money plays
the money,
in all of that.
Which, well, there's more money in everything because there's more money. I don't know. There's always been influence in the parties, I would say. I mean, there's always been people at the top running things, you know. So
I suppose.
that's a good question. Has either party ever really been grassroots ever?
That would be a good question.
I don't really have an answer to that, but, you know, are we running the parties or are the parties running us? I think it's more the parties are running us. Okay. We've already kind of messed up the schedule here. We've talked about things we weren't supposed to be there.
That's all right.
No, that's fine. Well, it says, what did you learn of the other's political perspective? In other words, I talked about me, you've talked about you, so you talk about what you think, what you've learned from me, and then the other way.
Well, I don't think we've talked that much about that yet. I mean, I would say all I know is that you're red, so I might be interested in. And
let me interrupt a moment. I'm red by declaration or something. I wouldn't say I'm just red. You know?
Okay. So I would sort of maybe be interested in if we shared a little bit of our journey along those lines. Would that make sense?
That's fine. Yeah, because if somewhere at this point we're supposed to look at the commonality, and again, we're back and forth all over. So forget this. Okay. Because my feeling is, if you really get down to it, how many people are for slavery? Raise your hand. You know, nobody. How many people are for poverty and people starving? Raise your hand. Nobody. You know. So I mean, the commonality is really the truth. I think it's the differences are the finer points.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
Yeah.
So. Okay. So
I can say for myself, like, I grew up. I think my history and context is what got me where I am. So
you're what?
History and context,
okay.
You know. So, like, for me, I grew up. My dad had been involved in state politics in Kentucky and local politics during my childhood. And he was a Democrat. I don't know exactly when he really got involved in that, but I think all of my life he was, at least all that I remember. And so I, kind of took that on. And I also will say that growing up in Fort Thomas, at the time, it was more red. And I don't really know what it is today because I get a skewed view from being on that Facebook page. It makes it sound like there's a lot of blues in Fort Thomas, but I'm not sure. And I do have a lot of personal friends from Fort Thomas that really changed after 2016. That would have been historically Republican but weren't anymore in Fort Thomas. So I would say that one thing that I value that I think is an interesting point to maybe bring up and talk about perhaps is something that I think progressives think of as their identity that probably isn't actually, one of those things. So I'll just say what it is. So and I use the term progressive, I guess. I'm using that instead of Democrat, which is interesting to note in and of itself, right? But I have always valued being open-minded and really, like I said before, wanting to hear the other perspective. And I think that is one of the things that progressives think they're better at.
I think you're right.
And I admit that I don't think that's probably true. However, it is one of my values that drew me to being a blue. And also, I think that I would, I really have a strong sense of fairness, like really deeply ingrained in me. I'm just like super aware of something being fair or not,
Yeah, we're gonna have to work with that.
Yeah, and so I think that I have these sort of like basic thoughts of like, everyone, not to be some sort of, like everyone should have all the same income like communism or something like that, but that
equal opportunity?
Well, more than that, though, because I really see and have come to understand the social stratification that I perceive in our society, and how there's a book called Born on Third Base. I don't know if you've heard of it, but just the concept of, I was born on third base. It didn't take, it doesn't take much for me to get to home, but that a lot of people are born on first base or second base and have a lot of barriers and disadvantages.
Yeah. Just to be argumentative, some people are not even on any base and end up hitting a home run somehow. You know what happens.
That is true, but that's not the norm.
Not typical. Not typical for anybody. Really, black, white, anything.
And some people are born on third base and slip back to first base.
I know a few.
Yeah.
Let me jump in because I want to catch up on my side with you as far as where I'm really from, besides being from Massachusetts. Because you say your father was in Democrat politics. My parents would not tell us any leanings they had.
Interesting.
Yeah. They voted in every election. They read the paper. They watched the news. They would not suggest anything to us about what we should be thinking and perceiving. They would not steer us. They insisted that we be honest. They would come down on us for lying, even in the general sense of being less than truthful. Fairness, you mentioned. They didn't want to see us trying to put ourselves in front of anybody else. We're all equal in the social sense, at least. So that was my training. But any political training, they wouldn't do it.
That's interesting.
To this day, I can only surmise how my parents might have voted.
Huh? Wow.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
So
that is interesting. That's very different from my experience.
So it explains a little bit about where I'm coming from, I think. And that's funny because Massachusetts has always been a Democrat state. And I certainly, as a kid, even though I didn't know from Democrat, Republican, what's that, I look back and I have that sense of it.
Now, would you be willing to share what you surmise about your parents?
Sure, which is not much. My mother certainly would have, espoused women's rights, except that by the time I was old enough to have a clue, women pretty much had rights, and I got that. I was becoming an adult right at Equal Rights Amendment, that sort of thing. So it was trying to recall it all and say. On the one hand, because of my mother being as resourceful as she was no dummy. I thought, well, she can handle things. What's the problem? But then you look at a bigger picture and say, okay, if these laws apply to men, why don't they apply to women, and vice versa? So yeah, I had that to sort out, but yeah, it all made sense. My father might have been more inclined to vote Republican. He was an engineer, so he's more of a let's do the math here kind of person. But again, my mother was more intuitive. But she did the bookkeeping, so she could do it. They make a perfect team between them, certainly.
Yeah.
So that's about all I can tell you.
Okay. And I would say my parents, I don't remember them trying to influence us in any way. I think because like I said, that, really drive for curiosity and hearing the other side. My dad and both my parents are very curious about the other side, particularly my dad. And so anyways, interesting I think our backgrounds really do inform us, and I even already have a sense from you called yourself, what did you say, an
individualist.
Individualist. Yeah. That sort of, sounds like your parents were taking some steps maybe to make sure that you formed your own opinions.
Oh, absolutely.
And gave that value to you of individualism.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They probably the one way I could really upset them is to become some sort of a die-hard supporter of anything.
Okay.
As long as I could substantiate why I supported it with some sort of rationality and explanation. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm a Reds fan. Well, why?
Yeah.
I just am.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Right.
But if you start saying the Reds are the best team, just make that declaration based on, then my parents would not have appreciated that, and I don't do it.
Yeah,
So.
Which is interesting because my dad, and I inherited this trait, loves to argue. He's a lawyer, and I love to argue. And I find that actually having back and forth kind of debate helps me change my views on things more than anything.
Yeah, I have to convince myself I'm right, and if I can't, I'm perfectly willing to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm wrong.
Yeah. And so I'm really pro debate, argument, but what's interesting about today is it's really hard to do that because people take it so personally.
Because they pick their sides. It's what I just said. I think about the Reds are the best, and somebody says, well, I don't know what their name is anymore. Cleveland, whatever they are right now.
Oh yeah, I forget too.
It's the best. And again, if you want just good-naturedly argue about who's got the best pitching or something, well, fine. But if you take it to heart, like the Reds must take this series or the world will end.
And to make it an emotional thing, and that it
I think
says
emotional's
something.
got a lot to do with it.
And that it reflects on you. I'm from Cincinnati, but it's nothing personal that the Reds are like, whether they're the best team or not. Like, I don't even know any of them personally. Like, I can be the most super fan that I can be, but yet people do take things personally about sports.
And I think we've hit on something and didn't even know it. When you make it personal, when it becomes emotional, rationality is out the window. And that's the end of it. You can't do that.
Right. And that would be something that is a high value in my family line, especially on my dad's side, is rationality. Now, that can also trip you up because, I think that my views are the most rational ones. Most people probably do. Now, some people are more lean towards, love the intellectual stimulation, and I'm one of those. I'm an intellectual type, right? So I like reading books and news and history and things like that. And so I think there are a lot of people, and maybe the majority of people in our country right now, that aren't necessarily on either side. They're just not that intellectual. So I think, some people talk about people aren't informed. That could be a big part of our struggle in our country right now.
Well, I'm sure, but let me cut in on that a little bit. I don't see where there's any constitutional requirement that anybody be informed.
Right, there's not.
And I don't just mean that from a legal perspective, but from a social perspective. If a person just wants to have their life
Yeah,
and live it and not deal with politics,
Yeah.
I think that's an essential right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think because here we are, because of our political views and leanings, and it's so important to us, we bothered to be here right now.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's like, I don't care.
right.
And I don't have to.
Yeah, I think most
Yeah.
people probably.
I think so. So we
Well,
make it.
and think about how many people didn't even vote, don't
Yeah.
even vote,
Yeah,
even in the
yeah.
presidential
And you and I
elections,
both look at it, we probably cancel each other's votes a lot, but we vote. Other people, again, say, the hell with it, I want nothing to
Right.
do with this.
Yeah.
And I can't fault them for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You should be able to live your life your own way. Somebody sees to it that the roads gets paved and the trash gets picked up and you pay your taxes. To start saying, I'm for, I like this guy, therefore he should be in charge, or
Yeah,
even if you have a rationale, even if you can explain why this guy should be in charge and it makes sense, somebody else can say, something, I just don't care.
yeah.
That's
Now,
a right.
I do want to say something on a comment you made there. So you said something about as long as your trash gets picked up and the roads are, repaired and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Now, a curiosity I have about a lot of what's going on currently in politics is, there's, it seems like from my perspective that I perceive that there are a lot of people that want the government they don't want to pay taxes as much.
Yeah, nobody
as,
wants to pay
you know,
taxes.
yeah,
I know what you're getting at.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Like they want taxes to be lower. I am maybe unusual in that I don't know that I'm unusual. I'm fine with taxes because I really like all the things that the government does
But
for
could they
us.
do it for less money? Could they do them better for less money?
Well, now that's the question. But I don't, I have a curiosity about how much our government does that people don't realize. Like roads are a really good example. Like, what if our roads were in disrepair, our interstates, our side roads, I mean, that's a huge expense that the government covers that I think people don't think about. So with kind of the extreme end of people wanting, the government to get out of all of these areas and reduce all of these things in extreme ways, I wonder if people really have thought through all the ways our government is a part of our everyday lives that we don't even know. Like
but-
regulating buildings, right? Building codes.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with that because I
Right.
dealt with it.
Right.
Yeah, and it does get, there's a lot of things I can say about that, and I won't say it was terrible, my experience with the city, or sometimes it was.
Yeah,
But other
I
times-
believe it because that stuff is
Yeah. But other
really
time-
annoying, but it's for a good reason.
But you can have a terrible building inspector that
Yes,
exists,
that's
it's,
true.
but about Cincinnati, I won't say anything, overall, I won't say anything bad because it was
Yeah.
mostly not a bad experience. But again, there's competence and there's incompetence
True.
everywhere.
Yes. Yes.
And in the private sector, the incompetent tend to get filtered out because businesses can't bear the expense and the costs. An incompetent employee can destroy things.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Oh,
I've seen
absolutely.
competent people destroy things.
Yeah.
And then I look at government, and you can just be, and I don't even say this of all government workers because I just complimented the building department, but the most incompetent doofuses don't get fired.
Yeah.
It just keeps going.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing is,
I'm sure that happens.
and the thing is, business, private enterprise attracts competence,
Yeah.
rejects incompetence. Guess what governments tend to do? The other way around,
I would not totally disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with that generally, I'll say. I do think that it's funny you bring that up because as a blue right now, I'm reading these articles, and again, I'm using my news sources, which, are CNN and New York Times primarily, but also just Google News where there's AP, and I actually go to the Hill a lot, and I go to the Drudge Report a lot, just to kind of see that. Those are my attempts to try to see the other side. I also sometimes go to Fox News. However, I have that just raised my blood pressure, even just saying it, because we maybe can get into that later. Anyways, what I want to say is, I just read an article, the New York Times editorial board put an article out, I believe yesterday, about the gutting of the FBI. And, okay, so there's competence as a general level, but then there's also competence from experience. And so right now, it really is disturbing to me, these, and like, people who are getting put in positions to run agencies and things like that have no experience. So like Pete Hegseth is the star example to me of running the Department of Defense, and he was like a Fox News caster, and then tried to raise awareness for veterans, and he's now running our defense department.
I don't know much about Hegseth's background. He wasn't that's not his career, being on Fox, but I don't really know.
No, I think his career was running
because he is
he was running some veterans nonprofits to, I think, try to raise.
That sounds right. But his actual history is he was a Green Beret, something like that. He was deep in military.
Okay, I didn't think he was. I thought he was sort of a short-lived. But anyways, as opposed to someone, though, who might have been, came from within the Department of Defense or within active military or something like that.
But if you're trying to reshape something, you don't necessarily do it from within.
Yeah, that's true.
The FBI has been corrupt for a long time. And it started off corrupt with J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah,
he
and
was
I don't
corrupt.
doubt that. I don't doubt that.
Well, that's, 40 years, the first 40 years of the FBI was corrupt.
Yeah.
And it hasn't straightened itself out
Yeah.
yet. And I don't think you can do it from internally.
Yeah.
I think you do it from the outside.
Yeah, maybe. And I mean, that's why it's good to have these conversations, because in my perspective, it's like, okay, I get wanting to bring reform and maybe some, but there's so much about these positions and jobs that, like in the FBI, that comes from knowing the system and experience. And I guess as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, well, that's exactly what you're saying, maybe.
Yeah, but the system is corrupt. I don't think you can fix it from the inside.
Yeah.
Now, we can argue over how corrupt the FBI is,
Yeah.
but I don't think it can be fixed from the inside.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's what businesses do. If, in general terms, if a big business is floundering, they don't promote from the inside. They bring somebody in from the outside and say, fix this.
But they do typically, don't they, bring someone in from a similar field, like someone who's going to come from one CEO to another CEO position.
I get a perfect example that I was going to bring up anyway. It was Lee Iacocca was the president of Ford and got fired for I still don't know any good reason. But at the same time, Chrysler was going out of business. They were just nosediving.
Yeah.
Well, they hired
Iacocca,
who brought them back.
Yeah.
Because they're nosediving again. But anyway.
Right, and that's a good example.
Yes, but he knew the automobile industry.
And that's what feels scary to me right now. And I mean, actually afraid. It puts fear in me to think that people are heading up defense and FBI who did not have really any background in making these big strategic decisions. And I mean, I'm talking about, whether to, bomb Iran, decisions that take a lot of qualifications to.
Well, for one, FBI, Kash Patel has huge experience in that, and Bongino also has experience.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, no, they're very.
I don't know as much about.
They are quite expert. Hegseth, I know he was something military, and so he's not coming out of nowhere on that. I can't really get deep into that.
Yeah, I'll be curious to look that up later. Well, we don't have to keep talking about that, but that is a really interesting little rabbit trail.
Because under the Obama administration, the Treasury Secretary was starts with a G, I think, but check him out. He has no experience in
Really?
that. None. He wasn't even in the
Okay.
general vicinity of having
Yeah.
any experience running the treasury.
Really?
So this
Okay.
just goes
Yeah.
on, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's right. You know, that there are a lot of examples right now of things like that where it's like, well, in the Obama, like I hear sometimes people quote that there were more deportations under Obama than there were during Trump's first term or something like that. I think there's a statistic on that. And those are really, I think, important things for us to realize, because I think that, you know, we can think that no one's ever gutted any government agency, and everyone that one from our party has always nominated to be a head of the Department of Defense has always been much more qualified and stuff, and that may not be true, you know.
Frankly, I'm sure it's not.
Yeah.
But because I think what happens, and this is true of administrations, governor, president, whatever, and in private business largely also, as there's these groups that are together, and maybe there's one guy that's more at the top, but they're all associated and have been for years. And if one of them is elected president, he brings his group in and tries to make them fit the needs of the government, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe they can, and maybe they can't, but he brings his group in, and because he trusts them, that makes sense. But they may or may not be actually competent to do what they're assigned to do. And I say this about any president, any time, any governor.
And that's where the money comes in, right? Because a lot of
that's
times
that's a lot of it, yeah.
You know, and supporters.
Yeah, and when you think Washington, D.C., which is, as many bureaucrats there have said, is presidents come and go, we stay.
Yeah.
You know, so what do you do? What do you do about that? If you're the president and you're trying to shake it up and make it more responsive, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I mean, yes, and I think many of us on the red in the the blue category. It's funny, I keep messing that up. You know, might much more than we would like to admit, think there should be a lot of reform and reworking in the government, and there's a lot of broken systems and that kind of thing. It's interesting right now that the current administration just went really extreme with some of that, more so than we're used to, you know, as far as...
And you're upset by that, and I think it's wonderful. There's the difference.
Right. Extreme could be in a good way, right? Or could be in a bad way. And so it'll be interesting because from my perspective, there's concern that, like you said, government bureaucrats, people who've been in government know a lot of the systems and how things work, like, you know, things like Social Security or IRS, things like that. You know, a lot of people are just day-to-day workers, right? You know, like, they're not making detrimental decisions.
But are they doing their job?
Well, true. I think a lot of them probably are doing some menial job that's just filing paperwork or doing this and that on the computer and stuff like that. And so the fine-tooth comb approach seems just, to me, feels better. I guess it would take longer, but I worry that the more chainsaw approach will have long-term effects that are hard to come back from when there's this knowledge base that's lost. You know, because I think about when I work at Knox Church, when we get a new employee that comes in, we have like 12 people on our church staff or something like that. But, so not huge, but when one person leaves a position, especially if it's like, you know, office manager or financial area, you know, the amount of just knowledge, job knowledge, and there's a word for that.
I know what you mean anyway.
Anyways, that that is lost when they walk out the door is like, sets us back. I mean, it
I
sets
know.
us back like maybe months. In one case recently, I would say even years.
Yeah. No, I get that. I ran a business. And
yeah.
The one person that business could not survive without was me.
Yeah.
And I'm not proud of that. I wish I had more guys taking over more of
Yeah.
the responsibility. Some did, some didn't.
Yeah. So when you gut drastically the, government workers, how much is it setting you back?
Yeah.
That's a fear of mine.
Yeah. But it's like I said, boy, we have this down to a really tight system, boom to boom, everybody knows their job. Yeah. But if the system isn't working, that doesn't cut it, And I think a lot of people don't think the system is working so well in DC. And I think that's blue and
And
red,
I wouldn't disagree with the system not working so well in a lot of ways. I just wonder if that, and I don't know which levels of leadership would need to change in order to change some of the systems, but it feels like to me, or in my perspective, it seems like a lot of people left government jobs because they were offered to with the
Right.
and I
know some of
deal
those
and
people,
whatever,
yeah.
and there's really low morale right now in federal government workers. And so what if a lot of people that weren't going to have any, they would have been a person who, say, the, Social Security Department or whatever revamps how they're doing everything. And they would have been just as a worker willing to make that change. Their boss tells them to change it, they would change it. How many of those people, and just the loss of the knowledge, internal knowledge,
I know what you're
institutional
saying.
knowledge.
Yeah. No, there
So
are
that's just a big fear, I think, in blues right now.
From my own personal knowledge of what I know is, losing a good employee is tough. Losing a bad employee is whatever.
Yeah.
And you have to know the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you know the difference through a fine-tooth comb, not through a jigsaw.
Yeah.
But we don't have to argue that specific.
Well, yeah, we don't go into forever. I will just say this because it came to my mind as we've talked about this. When Trump came in the first time, he tried to play by the rules, and they just attacked him. They did everything they could to destroy him from before he even took office. They were trying to destroy him. But he tried to play by the rules and go along, and what did it get him? So I came in the second time and said, okay, now we're playing my game my way. And I'm sorry, but I can't resent him for that because from how he's been treated by the very people that are saying now they're supposed to go along with him.
Yeah.
What good would that get him?
Yeah.
Where would that get him?
Well, yeah. I mean, so with Donald Trump, I think he didn't really know the system that well the first time.
He certainly didn't.
And now he does, and so
Yeah.
he can work it better to his advantages. With him specifically, my concern is that, it appears to me that he doesn't have a lot of personally strong political or government beliefs. I think he's
He's a
just
businessman.
influenced by people. He is so specifically, his personality is so prone to kind of loyalty and having people that sort of like him and the celebrity side of him, right?
Yeah. But what politician isn't like that?
Well, yeah, I think he's a little more. I think he seems a little more than average to really like the sort of the word loyalty is coming to mind. Flattery. I think he's very influenced by flattery. It seems more than, and I'm not going to say any specific politicians. There are, well, I will. George W. Bush, for example. I think he had a lot of, and he came from a political family, right? So his dad had been president. He had a lot of really, truly deep-seated, integrity-based beliefs that he would and did stand up to he didn't let flattery influence him. And I'm saying that even, being one that thought that, the Iraq War, that he was influenced. But I think
Yeah, I
he
think he
really
was, too.
believed truly in his, that that was the right decision. Whereas I don't get that same feeling about Donald Trump. And so him specifically, I think, it feels different to me when you talk about like I don't feel like he's necessarily bringing government reforms that he's felt strongly about for a long time and that are deep seated out of like a place of strong, deep held beliefs like some other presidents who were involved in politics in a different way and kind of had a different background.
Well, let me offer this because I get what you're saying and I don't entirely disagree. But Democrat or Republican politicians generally want more government. Whatever the solution is, it involves more government. Trump is maybe the only president that's ever been. His solution is less government.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he's more that than anyone else.
Yeah. Only one that I know of.
Well, people run on that, but yeah. I mean,
they say all kinds of things,
Yeah.
and I pay no attention to what they
but
say. I
in
pay attention to what they
comparison
do.
to him, you're right.
Yeah.
Nobody has come close to wanting to do away with government than Trump.
Yeah. And for a person like myself, the radical individualist who has no use for the federal government at all, go protect our borders, go fight wars if need to, set the tariffs. It's in the Constitution. That's what they're supposed to be doing over there.
Yeah.
Don't pave my roads. The state of Ohio is for paving roads. The city of Cincinnati is for collecting the trash. We
Yeah.
don't need the federal government for that.
Okay.
That's all. Yeah, I guess I haven't stressed that enough. To me, it's
Yeah.
largely about the federal government
Yeah.
more than it's some other kind of stuff. It's just why do we have so much friggin' federal government, which is a lot more than when I started out. I mean,
So
this
you're
keeps growing.
more, you would say, for local and state government to do things without regulation from the federal government.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you still really value and want like the government to regulate building codes and to do the roads and
as
that kind of
minimally as
stuff.
possible, but absolutely, of course. Because, and this, I keep saying this, you may be hearing this for the first time from me, but other people have heard it many times. The states created the federal government. The states are supposed to be controlling the federal government. The federal government is not supposed to be controlling the states.
Yeah.
It was never constitutionally set up like that. Spend some time thinking about if there were not two political parties to have control of everything, which they have no right to have.
Yeah.
If there were no two political parties that control everything,
Yeah.
and things could operate the way they were intended to in the Constitution, think how different it would be with the states telling the federal government, here's what power you've got, and that's it.
Yeah.
Forget the Supreme Court telling them, I don't forget it, the Supreme Court counts, but the states would actually have more power than the Supreme Court, or the President, or Congress, because they run it. They control it. There's nothing that goes on in Washington that the states don't ostensibly have full control of. And the only reason it's not working that way is because the two political parties have usurped the whole damn thing and changed it over to what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, which, I mean, I'm not going to totally agree with everything you said there, but I'll concede some of that. But that's kind of an interesting thought exercise. However, the party system is, the bedrock of our democracy.
No, it's
so,
not. That's like saying the mafia is the bedrock of Chicago. Well, you'd be right, but that doesn't make it the way it should be.
Well, I guess I mean representative democracy.
Why?
Well, because people have the ability to be represented in the decisions that are made. And so the way that we do that is through elected officials who then should represent us, and gerrymandering is one of our, to me, worst political problems that contributes to
The two parties
the
are
lack
doing
of
that.
that.
The two parties are doing that.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, so the opposite of what we have would be something like China, which I spent time living
Well,
there.
China has one party. Yeah. And how well is that working out?
Yeah, but I mean, there's not a place where there's no, I mean, are there governments where there's not a regime or a party in charge?
Oh,
I
it's a
don't,
good
that's a
question.
great
Good
utopian
question.
idea, but
Yeah. Well, it's a good point, and I've
Yeah.
spent a lot of time contemplating that point.
Yeah.
And the question is what I want possible? But I definitely would say it's desirable.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say it's my job to push that direction as hard as I can,
yeah.
and not accept the way it is, which I think is sucks.
I get that. However, I would think you would, I mean, to me, at the end of what you're pushing should be something that is at least in some ideal world attainable. Because what if you push too far for something, like, and then you got anarchy,
Yeah. Well, I'm nowhere near anarchy.
Well, no, I mean, but like if someone took to the extreme, we shouldn't have anyone in charge.
No, I didn't say that. I'm just saying the two parties shouldn't have control of
Yeah.
everything. And they
Yeah.
shouldn't.
But what would be, okay, so would more parties be a solve for that, or?
That's one solution. Certainly other countries do have other parties, and I think that
Yes,
helps.
and I think that would help too.
And what I would like to see, and I've suggested this any number of times, and again, would be, well, again, can I make this happen? No, but maybe enough people could, that political parties couldn't operate at the federal and the state level.
Yeah,
So there'd be federal political parties and there'd be state political
okay.
parties. And therefore, being in it, there would be
Yeah.
there'd be a stratification, a well-defined stratification,
Interesting.
instead of this total control of every level by two political
Okay,
parties.
okay.
And to me, that's really desirable.
yeah.
But
That's
you'd
an
have to get
interesting
the two
thought. I never
parties
thought
to
about
either
that.
go along with it, which they won't, or you'd have to weaken them to the point where they couldn't stop you.
Yeah.
So
That
I'll
is
go
an
for weakening them
interesting
to the
thought.
point where they can't stop us.
Yeah, which to me goes back to the money.
So the what?
The money that
Oh, money, yes.
funds
Well,
the parties and the candidates. I mean, there is this idea of campaign finance reform and having limits and stuff on that spending, so that it's not really just about who can raise the most money.
mhm.
So to
You
me,
want to talk about unattainable goals. Can we really keep the money
Yeah.
out of it? I'd love to.
No, that would take a massive, cultural change in our country. And again, because money is power, I don't have a lot of hope or faith that could actually happen.
Mhm.
However, there's, a potential framework for that, but
What's the
you know.
potential framework? you're
well,
saying?
that there would just be, every elected position would have a certain amount of money that they could spend, and,
It's all the hidden money and influence.
yeah, right, like I said,
Yeah. No, great idea in theory, but I don't know how you do it. I do have this one fantasy, and it may actually come to fruition, is the internet, where people like us can talk.
Yeah,
People listen and think. And this is new, because, when I was a kid, I won't guess how old you are, but all the way through my 40s, pretty much the only information you got on any level beyond what's going on in your neighborhood, you got from TV stations and the newspapers.
yeah,
They could be lying their butts off, you wouldn't know. They could be hiding all kinds of things, and they were, you wouldn't know. They can't do it anymore.
yeah.
So there's that. And if that kind of pervades to the point where people, and it is pervading, I mean, people do not trust the major media anymore, and they shouldn't. And I'm not talking Fox or CNN, I'm talking both. That maybe they start thinking, wait a minute, let me work this out in my own mind. And that is a big influence, I'm sure.
I think that is one of the worst problems to me, is that, yes, I agree that that's, that people don't trust media much. Something you said really piqued my interest at the beginning of the conversation, that you said about your parents, which was honesty.
Mhm.
And that was a huge value in my family
Sure.
too. And that's the value right now that I think is perhaps one of the most important for what to me feels like a breakdown of our fabric of our society. And you know, I think there was always corruption in the newspapers and the, you know, later in the TV and things like that. But I think that there was a concept of truth that still existed and prevailed at that, you know, time that you're talking about when you were in your 40s, that feels like it's the internet, while it exposes people to more sources, it also exposes them to vastly more false sources.
Sure.
And so, you know, you can put a website out there about anything and make it a news site and get followers.
I've given that example of making
Yeah.
up. I thought about, I'm even going to do this. Maybe I will sometime. Make up a few websites that are totally
Yeah.
phony, and then point people to them and say, take a look at that website and how
Yeah.
wonderful it is. Guess what? I made it up.
Yeah, that would be a really
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
experiment. But I think a lot of people would look at it if it said what they wanted it to say. They would believe it.
Yep.
And that's I think, sounds like you think that the internet has helped. I think it's done more harm to getting us to a place of getting to the truth of things.
Well, you got to be careful with the word truth, because everybody can have their own truth and be truthful about their own truth.
Sort of, but there are
yeah.
things, measurable facts.
I've got a science background. You got to be real careful with facts. because
Well, one
I
plus
can-
one is two. Right? 1 + 1 is 2.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And even that's relative. To an engineer, you say, well, wait a minute, who did the measuring and how accurate was the measuring? I'm
Yeah.
serious.
Yeah, I believe it.
I've laid things out very
And I'm all
meticulously.
about that.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
look at
yeah.
that.
I've laid
'Cause
things
then
out
you're
very
getting to the
meticulously
truth.
and ended up wrong, because a little bit wrong here, a little bit wrong
Yeah.
there adds up to a lot of wrong.
But
So-
your aim was accuracy, truth, and fact.
Right. Yeah. Who am I to? I know I'm wrong because I knew what right was supposed to be.
Right. Exactly.
And if you don't even know what right is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's what we can agree on, is that our goal should be well-defined, rational. If my goal is different than your goal, then we have to acknowledge that, and not say, well, you have to be like me, and you're saying, no, I have to be like you. If
Right.
my goal is this,
Yeah.
your goal is that, is we're trying to do here, do we have any goals in common
Yeah.
that we can work towards together?
Uh-huh.
And what are we going to do about the things that we don't agree on? Can we just leave them be?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the things you have to define ahead of time
Yeah.
before you even try to solve anything. And we're not doing
Yeah.
any of that. We're just beating our heads against the wall.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but it feels like to me, or in my perception, it seems like there's a lot of that there is a lack of appreciation for that.
yeah.
And specifically, I will get into my side now and say specifically with, I think that, you know, there was an increasing amount of sort of not having that bedrock sort of factual truth, actual stuff. But like that, to me, it appears that with a personality like Donald Trump, who is really just not interested in that, because he's really more about like
He's a pragmatist.
persuasion and
He's a pragmatist.
and so it kind of, to me, seems like it just exponentially increased our and really decimated the concept of basing decisions and kind of having honesty and truthfulness at the base of our society.
Well, honestly, I think he's honest. Do you think he's ever said anything that wasn't at least as true as any other politician?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, I think that he, one that just comes to mind to me is like things he says about January 6th. You know,
what about it?
like that. You know, he told his supporters to, stand down, and
He did.
eventually.
No, he did. He did before he was given, at the end of the speech he was giving, a mile and a half away from the riot, and he didn't even know what was really going on, even
Yeah.
ahead of that. At the end of his speech, we, meaning the people who were with
Yeah.
him, not over there, we are going to march to the Capitol peacefully, calmly, peacefully, whatever words he used,
Yeah.
and demonstrate. He said, he did not encourage them to violence. The people who were rioting never heard his speech.
Yeah.
They were in two
So-
different places. I know CNN didn't
Yeah.
tell you that, but that's the way it
Yeah.
was.
Well, I will hand you that he used those words, but
He didn't just use them; he meant it.
maybe. I mean,
And the people who heard
I don't
him
know.
didn't riot, and the people who rioted didn't hear him.
okay,
You know?
all right, but so to me, with that kind of brings up the backstory to that, which was who won the 2020 election.
Mm-hmm.
Did he? How did he? I can't conceive of how he really thought that he lost that election. I mean, that he won that election, because there wasn't anything that came out
There's a
ever
lot that came out.
that was.
The Pennsylvania, any number of judges made rulings that they have no right to make concerning mail-in elections. If there were missing signatures, they said, don't worry about missing signatures, count the vote anyway. The law specifically said, and their own judges are only supposed to interpret law, not
Yeah,
make law.
yeah, that's
They said
true.
the law says if there's no signature, if there's no date, it doesn't count. Well, the
Yeah,
judges said you count them anyway. Well, why'd they do that?
yeah.
That to me is fraud.
But even when you add up all the numbers, he still lost. Even if you accounted for those.
And I'm not expert at this, but if you crunch the numbers and really look at
Yeah.
what 40,000 votes in the entire country made the difference.
Yeah,
It was that close.
Yeah.
And if you take these votes away and put some there, he did win.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, well, and maybe I'm thinking of things too big, but, how about the case with, the various women that he has, that the courts have decided that he did in fact do all of these things.
What,
And
what,
he-
for instance?
Like, the hush money, Stormy Daniels, or
He paid
the-
it. Do you understand what that case was actually about? It wasn't about that he
But there
paid
were many
Stormy-
times that he denied it during the course of the,
No, he didn't
elections.
deny he made the payments.
Oh, that she got paid, you mean?
He never denied it. Paying her was not against the law.
He never denied it?
No.
I will maybe go back and do some research on that.
He said he
but-
never had sex with her. I don't know if that's true or not,
Yeah,
but he never denied the payments were made.
yeah.
The case was about how they were entered in the books. They were payments
Yeah, I do
were
realize that
entered
that
under
ended up
legal
being what the
expenses. Well,
case
if you're
was
paying
about,
a
yeah.
lawyer and your bookkeeper puts it under legal expenses, I'd say that's a rational thing to do. And they had the amount of contortions those lawyers had to do to try to connect dots to finally say, see, that's illegal. I'm going, well, wait a minute. Who even cares? They were just gunning for him. Alan Dershowitz wrote a whole book, Get Trump, which I did read. And if there's any constitutional lawyer that knows anything, it's him. And
Yeah.
he's a Democrat, hard
Yeah.
Democrat, and he's just disgusted with them,
Yeah.
with what they've
Yeah.
done.
Well, maybe I need to read that book. And I,
How long was it? I got it.
I don't have any specific instance in mind that I could look up on my phone right now. But my experience of that and the other woman, I'm not recalling her name, he said I didn't even know that woman, the woman that worked in the department store. And
yeah, I know what you mean. She didn't work in the department store. They were in the department store. Yeah.
Well, so things like that. It's like the court proved that
But
in that.
there was no evidence. It was only her saying this happened. That's all it was.
Well, I don't know the details of that.
And I know he said, she said cases can really be sad.
Yeah.
People can really be injured twice, let's say.
Yeah.
But in a court of law, there needs to be preponderance of proof.
But, well,
and there was
and
nothing.
I think
there was nothing.
I guess that's where we differ. I think there was.
Well, there's no proof. If you want to take her word for it, that's fine. I don't.
Anyways,
that's
we
all
don't need
it
to
is.
get
That's
into.
all. Well, I'm saying that's all there is her word.
And stuff, but
So.
yeah. Well, and that's where we can agree to disagree or understand something differently, and still, that's all right. I just, to me, there's a lot of problems with that. But one of the thing we were talking about was the corrosion of trust and truth, and to me, that is one of our greatest problems. And I don't think to me, in my perspective, again, I think a lot of this goes back to fear for all of us. And a great fear of mine is that if we don't have a basis of truth and trust in our society, then we're just going to keep getting into our camps and not and the tribalism will ensue, and
But there's always been tribalism, just not to refute what you're saying, but there's always been tribalism. There always will be. Again, I'm kind of a student of the 19th century. I'm a docent at the Harriet Beecher Stowe House,
cool.
concerning the Uncle Tom's Cabin, the abolitionist movement. To say that there wasn't a little bit of divisiveness at the time, and in Cincinnati, big time,
and
maybe bigger here.
And it's still there.
Not like it was. I mean, out of all the cities in America at the time, probably Cincinnati was like ground zero for divisiveness because we were right next to a slave state.
Yeah.
And the abolitionist movement, riots. So there's a big story there, but what I was really getting at was I have a number of 19th century newspapers. I try to collect them. Can I find a lie in any of those? Now, I have the advantage of history. I can look back and know if they were lying. No, I don't think there's a lie in any one of them. But did they have an editorial viewpoint? Oh, yeah. Big time. There were specific abolitionist newspapers, specifically pro-slavery newspapers.
Yeah.
You name it, there was a newspaper for it.
Yes.
So it's not really, even today, I'm not sure it's, and boy, they do some lying today. But I don't, even then, I'm not so sure it's
that
the
it's
lying, but the position they take and then pretend it's reality. It's their position is all it is. That's a big problem.
Yeah. So that's something we kind of agree on, but have different angles on, I would say.
Yeah, I just would like to see Fox or CNN and just spend a fair amount of time saying, here's our editorial. Here's what our bosses are telling us to say.
Yeah.
I want both of them to do that.
Yeah. So what news sources do you use?
I hate to tell you or admit or whatever, I do subscribe to the Inquirer just to get local news. I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal and don't read it enough. Epic Times, don't read it enough. I get a lot of my information off of Substack. Because there's more than just opinions on the site. There's people who are there. That. I mean, there are journalists on Substack, and they are answerable to themselves.
Yeah.
And you can either believe them or not believe them.
Yeah.
But there's nobody over their head saying, "Here's what you're going to say."
Yeah. No, that's interesting to hear. It's a good point to think about the editorial truth. Or perspective versus
I'm reluctant to use the word truth.
Yeah.
Not that I never do or never should or anybody else shouldn't, but remember, truth is subjective. Truth is not a fact, and you can even take a bunch of facts and try to create a truth.
So yes, truth as a concept. So maybe I should be using the word fact factual.
Yeah,
And again, you know, like, I mean, even in a court of law, you know, it is hard to determine the facts sometimes about, like,
I've speculated.
you know, different kinds of evidence or.
I've speculated if I was on a jury about anything, you know, significant.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having a Perry Mason thing where everybody knows what's really going on, I'm sitting there as a juror trying to actually figure it out.
Yeah.
What are the chances, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever probably sit on a jury and be sure. I don't, because think about this, if the guilt is so obvious, there's not going to be a trial. You know, because the person's going to confess and try to make a plea deal. Trial is for when it's so tight and so close
Yeah.
that then they have a trial. And that means the jurors are sitting there watching something that's so tight and so close, they could never say for sure, I don't think. So
Okay.
they have to
Well.
use their best judgment and see what they can do. I mean, P. Diddy, whatever, I know so little about the guy
Yeah,
going in,
I don't
and I don't even know much more now, but I can imagine being a juror sitting there saying, yes, he's a scumbag,
Yeah.
but did he commit a crime?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and the beyond all reasonable doubt, you know,
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
that a very difficult decision. I don't feel the same way about that. You know, that you could never really know. I think there are times when you can.
But they won't go to trial. When you
well,
know there's no trial.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
my viewpoint on it.
Yeah, I think sometimes there are. I have watched a number of the different, you know, like documentaries on trials where there's somebody who, you know, was convicted of murder and they, you know, try to, it's portraying that they're innocent and things like that. And so I think there are definitely some situations where it's pretty, you know, I was a student at Duke when there was the lacrosse team.
Oh yeah.
That went to trial, and that ended up being, that was a jury trial, but it ended up, they found out that she had made it up, you know. So, anyways, so where are we?
Well, we are going past your time. I can go all day. How much time do you have?
I could just about 15 more minutes.
Okay, all right.
If there's anything else, you know.
I think I've gone over this. I think we've gone over this 3 or 4 times actually.
Well, maybe something about what did we learn about.
Yeah, because we are supposed to end up, you know, we have the opportunity for a second conversation if we care to. This might be a good time to say,
Yeah.
are we getting anywhere? Do we want to do this more? I'm fine with it, but I'll put it on you.
Yeah, well, I think we're getting somewhere for me.
I do too.
Because I feel like we've found a lot of commonality. We've also found the edges of that.
Yeah.
And it gives me greater insight.
Yep.
I think that your comment about federal government versus the state and local government is not, it helps me grasp that there may be other reds that aren't just like wanting to do away with government at all levels, but just want it. You know, I mean, you do hear that you want it more in the states and stuff, but you've given me a little more insight specifically on that.
Okay, well, good. And I do have to be reminded that we do need a federal government,
Yeah.
you know. Because in my ideal world, you really don't have much government at all because everybody is responsible for themselves.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean you go live in a cave by yourself, but it just means you work cooperatively as agreed on, you know.
Yeah.
And as a contractor, that's exactly how it is.
Oh, yeah, right.
You build, it still fascinates me that these big multi-million-dollar buildings get built.
Yeah.
And everybody's just there handling their responsibilities. There's a big boss, the project manager, but and it's job superintendent, and they're kind of just making sure people don't hit. But somehow it all goes together and works, and you'd be surprised how little supervision there is to it.
Yeah, I believe that. However, there's so much in government that is directing human nature. You know, it's protecting against human nature, and so you know,
well, against murderers, yeah.
I think that makes it infinitely more complicated. You know, and
Yeah, because I'll make your point for you. Okay, we're building this big building, and we all want to get it right, but whose building is it?
Yeah.
And do we really need that building? And who's
Yeah.
paying for it?
Yeah.
There's all of that.
Yeah. And so humans are just really complicated beings,
Well, good,
and so to try to manage us all living together, and every country in the world has some sort of apparatus that's trying to manage people, and it is strange coming up on our 250th anniversary next year. We haven't been around that long,
We have one of the oldest active constitution in the world, I think.
Wow.
Germany is younger than we are. Italy is younger than we are.
Yeah, that is interesting to point out. So I feel like one thing I also take away is that I really hope you're right about a lot of things,
I hope I am too.
because I think you have more, I really respect your views just from the little time we've gotten to know each other. I can tell that you really think through them deeply and are very intelligent about all of that. And with my perspective on things right now, I hope I'm wrong about a lot of things for how kind of.
Yeah, I'll back you up on that
there.
for your sake. Yeah, let's both hope you're wrong about the things you think.
Yeah.
Because I'm not dead sure I'm right about everything.
Yeah.
I know how I want it to be. I don't know if that's how it's going to work out, or if Donald Trump's going to be the guy that makes it happen.
Yeah.
You can't know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So maybe that's a good spot to end on.
Yeah, I think so. So. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, and I would be interested in talking again.
Okay.
I don't know what the next iteration is, but whether I do,
We can look over.
They
They keep us instructions. We'll look over the instructions. But let's do this again and see where we get.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Well, then
thank
I'll just
you.
turn to the screen and say thank you everybody for watching and/or listening, and we'll see you next time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks again for watching and/or listening to Individualists Unite. Conversations with Real People. And thanks again to Tina. Between us, I think we've proved that two people with very differing views on politics can have an intelligent, rational conversation without fighting with each other. If you haven't already done so or haven't done so recently, please visit my website at individualistunite.substack.com. That's individualistunite.substack.com. Also remember, if you want to watch more of these, there's on any server podcast platform, you can see Individualists Unite, Conversations with Real People, and also my regular podcast, just plain old Individualists Unite.